that Xavier Worthy had for the Kansas City Chiefs. My goodness gracious. You wake up Saturday, and you may have started seeing some of the reports that the Chiefs' rising star, who had a couple of touchdowns in the Super Bowl after a great rookie season, found himself in a world of hurt after he was hit with domestic assault charges. Well, as it turned out, once we waited about, 12, 24 hours, that wasn't the case. Here we go.
You have breaking news and a story we brought you earlier. Lawyers for Chiefs wide receiver Xavier Worthy say the charges against him have been dropped. The star rookie was arrested in Texas last night on domestic violence charges. But again, those charges were dropped.
That from KCTV5. And in a statement, Xavier Worthy's attorneys, Chip Lewis and Sam Bassett, said their client was innocent of the charge against him. They said the allegation was made by a female who had been living in Worthy's home and that she had been asked to leave the home multiple times over the last 2 weeks upon discovery of her infidelity. She has refused to vacate the residence, has made a number of extortive efforts prior to resorting to this baseless allegation against Mr. Worthy. The complainant further destroyed a room in the residence, scratched Mr. Worthy's face, and ripped out parts of his hair, which there is photographic evidence of. Worthy told law enforcement at the time of the incident that he did not want to press charges against the complainant. So that is what happened with Xavier Worthy. It's believed, by the way, that this is tied back to Tia Jones, his fiance. So this is just, it's a mess. I'm glad that he has been able to clear his name in the span of 24 hours. But it does go to show you, Xavier Worthy may have dodged a bullet here with Tia Jones. It's crazy to think that the most important decision that you make in your life that will impact your career, impact obviously your family, impact how much you enjoy your life for decades to come is who you end up marrying. There is no decision that will have a bigger impact on literally every other facet of your existence than who you marry. And you can look at high-profile cases, athletes, celebrities, or you can look at people in your own life, right, who literally have had very different outcomes in life, in large part driven by who they chose to spend the rest of their life with. And now Xavier Worthy ends up in this just hot mess of a situation. And thankfully, he's going to be able to get out of this thing. But listen, this is the worst part of it, right? You end up in a situation where people see you getting charged, people see the accusations, and they say, okay, what did you do now? Now, I tweeted over the weekend when I saw the charges that the Chiefs should require their wide receivers to just play in the UFL so there's no offseason for these guys, because that seems like something that seems to cause some issues for them, shall we say. And I stand by that. People are like, oh, you gotta eat your words. Well, no, I stand by that. I didn't say Xavier Worthy was a criminal, but I said it seems like every offseason we've got some issues with this group, so just keep these guys playing football through the offseason. Let's go.
Don't let them go back to Texas.
Well, that's the other thing, man. Rashee Rice had his issues, of course, in Dallas last year on the highway in late March. And now Xavier Worthy back down in Central Texas as well. Rashee Rice went to SMU. Xavier Worthy went to the University of Texas down in Austin. So that as well. Maybe that's the better way to put it. Instead of us wearing them down playing UFL football, keep them in Kansas City. Keep them out of Texas, John.
We'll do it in the old days. We'll kick it old school, and we'll just pay them couple thousand, $50,000 a year, right? Now they got to work and sell some insurance in the offseason. They got to get a job or hit a sports cast.
Hey, we need a salesperson here. They can
Something
come over
like
here.
That. That'd help.
I think Xavier Worthy would be great on KCMO, hitting the streets, selling the product.
Pretty much that's how our first Super Bowl champions had to do it. They worked hard in the season and then had to get back to work in the offseason.
I like the sound of that, actually. Now we're on to something here. We had it all figured out on KCMO Talk Radio. So Xavier Worthy has these charges dropped. More will come out, I'm sure, in the days ahead. But this looked like a mess on Saturday, and by Sunday you're sitting there saying to yourself, man, I feel for you, Xavier, and he appears to have dodged a bullet.
Yeah, she pulled his hair out,
Yes.
for one thing. And then just last night on Instagram, he posted a photo of himself with a shaved head now.
Oh, did he?
So he actually got rid of the dreads. He had to get a whole new haircut because of what happened, essentially.
Wow. Okay. I never understood that, having the hair out like that, because you could have guys tackling you by your hair if it's too long coming out of the helmet. So now the fastest man in the NFL may have just gotten a little bit faster as well. Jeez, what a mess. Well, speaking of messes, over the weekend, there was a big rally in Kansas City as well, down on the plaza. I'm sure that you might have, well, you were only there if you stumbled upon it, because this was the craziest of crazy in Kansas City. It was led by someone who used to be an activist in Kansas City, Missouri. He's run for office and failed every time, and his name is Justice Horny. And he is somebody who considers himself, in a strange roundabout way, a modern-day Martin Luther King or something like that. It's just very weird how some of these people view themselves. So there was, it looked like maybe a couple hundred people down on the plaza, and they were protesting bigoted Republicans at the state and federal level and do-nothing local Democrats in Kansas City. And the caption from Horn read, "We filled the plaza with hundreds of folks to remind local do-nothing Democrats and bigoted Republicans at the state and federal levels that people power will always be more powerful than political power." Now, I was looking at some of the folks who were out there on the plaza over the weekend and some of the signs they were holding up, and it was really a who's who of people, let's just put it this way, that don't seem all that joyful. Some of the signs, a lot of F Trump signs were out on the plaza. This was on Saturday. This is maybe my favorite sign. Trump says there are only two genders. He is wrong again. That was one of the signs I'm reading on the poster board here. Let's see, what else do we have here? A lot of Ukrainian signs as well. Kind of bizarre on that front. A lot of green hair out and about on the plaza over the weekend as well. So the green hair was out in full force at this rally on the plaza on Saturday. The people will defeat Trump's extreme right agenda. That sign also made the cut as well. You know, a lot of poster boards and things like that. So what's fascinating is the same people who claim the Democrats are doing nothing are literally just standing on the plaza on a Saturday afternoon yelling, making noise, and being as extreme to the other side as they possibly can, insisting that that is the answer, doubling down on the wokest, most progressive policies with some of the most progressive local failed politicians in Kansas City is apparently the way forward for the party in Missouri and in the United States in general. And nobody in their right mind possibly comes to that conclusion. Nobody looks at what happened in November. And whether you're in Missouri and you're looking at it from a local perspective or looking at it from a national perspective and says, you know what we need more of? You know what we definitely have to be doing right now? Doubling down on there being 17 genders. And might have only been 15 on this poster board, but you get the point. Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 16 genders they wrote down here on this poster board. Trump says there are only two genders. He is wrong again. And they had 16 different signs, you know, like the male-female signs that exist with the little circle and the arrows in different directions. They had 16 different options written down there. So that apparently is the way forward. If you want to never win again in Missouri or nationally, please continue on. That will really go well for you, I promise. If you actually want to have some moment where you self-reflect and look in the mirror, well, then you will realize that is not the way forward. It's 6:15. Speaking of protests and rallies, did you see J.D. Vance got confronted while he was with his 3-year-old over the weekend? We'll get you the details on what happened there and the why behind it coming up next on 95.7 FM KCMO and streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app.
Stream Mundo in the morning on the KCMO Talk Radio app.
We told you about the big protest out on the plaza over the weekend. A couple hundred people down there holding the F Trump signs and the whole thing. I was not down there this weekend. If you were, if you had to drive through it, if God forbid you have to walk through it, I'd be curious to hear how that was at 913-408-7957. But on a national level, J.D. Vance, the vice president, got confronted walking through the streets of Cincinnati with his 3-year-old daughter. I kid you not. J.D. Vance got confronted by a bunch of protesters who were going to a pro-Ukraine rally. And they just happened to bump in to the vice president of the United States, who's just walking the streets with his 3-year-old. And it looked like, if you didn't see the video, I'll put it up on X at Pete Mundo. You can see it there. But it clearly was a fairly aggressive scene for a guy who's got a 3-year-old in a stroller. Now, no matter how you feel about J.D. Vance, no matter how you feel about any politician, walking up to them when you have him outnumbered, like, significantly, well, this individual is with a 3-year-old in a stroller, says much more about you than it does about him. These people are sleazeballs. And this is the kind of stuff that, regardless of how you feel politically, we have got to get it out of our political discourse. I'm not saying that you can't walk up to a politician on the streets and tell them how you feel. You can. You can also do it in a respectful manner. I would say that if you saw Emmanuel Cleaver on the streets of Kansas City,
you mustard moo.
There we go.
There you go. 622. I already dropped it on a Monday. Let's go, baby. If you saw Sharice Davids on a street corner, I don't care who it is. I don't care what side of the political aisle they are on. I would say you have every right to voice your opinion to an elected official. But there's a way to do it. And this, well, this is not it at all.
America's Hitler. What changed?
Cell phone video shows the moment Vice President J.D. Vance was approached by pro-Ukraine protesters in Cincinnati, Ohio.
People are dying.
The protesters were on their way to a pro-Ukraine rally nearby when the chance encounter with the vice president occurred.
My 3-year-old daughter now, and I told you, I talked to you for 5 minutes.
Sign up for this job.
And now,
That's what you agree. Yeah,
I did
why
not agree
people are
to have my
yelling at you?
3-year-old to have people run around and yell at her.
Right now.
You signed up for this. I'm just stopping it right there. Notice how he goes, listen, I've got my 3-year-old. I'm not going to sit here and get yelled at. You signed up for this. Is there anything worse right now in American culture than the old super woke liberal white lady? There isn't. Just in case you want the answer, there isn't. And this is a prime example of why. Those are the people who are heckling J.D. Vance, you know, the gray-haired Subaru driving, in this house we believe sign-bearing individuals who are super loud on Facebook and super aggressive and super miserable, I will add. These are the most miserable people in our society today. And they tell J.D. Vance, as he's walking around this 3-year-old, you signed up for this. No, I mean, listen, there's plenty that he signed up for. He knew the risk that he was taking becoming the vice president to Donald Trump. Did he sign up for getting harassed and heckled by large groups of old super woke ladies in Cincinnati with his 3-year-old who's getting nervous and scared in the moment sitting in a stroller? As a father of a 3-year-old, I'm sitting there and I'm saying to myself, I'm infuriated for him watching this. Now, the difference is my 3-year-old might have walked up to these women and kicked them in the knee. That's what my 3-year-old might have done. If there were a bunch of men, she might have kicked them somewhere else. But she wouldn't have given a rip. But, you know, J.D. Vance's kids might be better behaved than mine. I don't know. But that's what my 3-year-old would have done. I'll just say that much. But to sit there and watch this video unfold, as if somehow they're going to get some concession out of J.D. Vance. He's going to be sitting there on the streets of Cincinnati. He actually didn't know how these people felt. He's like, you know what? I never thought of that point. That's you know what? Next time I see Zelensky, I'm going to say that. That is not to say that you don't have a right to voice your opinion to your public servants. That's what these people are. But there's a right and a wrong way to do it.
Wrong saddle.
Exactly. They certainly invaded Ukraine in 2022.
And
But there needs to
2014. And
be
Georgia
a
and
settle.
Texas.
Ma'am?
We are the aggressor every time.
I understand that that's your view, and
No,
certainly
that's not our view. It's the truth. You call
About 5
Trump
minutes.
America.
On the text line, Pete, why act like J.D. Vance has no Secret Service protection? I never said he didn't have any Secret Service protection. I didn't say J.D. Vance's life was at risk. That's not the point. The point is, if you deal with 3-year-olds, if you deal with young children, you put them in a spot there where he's trying to be polite to American citizens. He knows exactly how this is going to go, and he kept us cool. He's trying to be polite to American citizens. That's what he's doing. And on the other side, he's not getting an ounce of it. It's eerily reminiscent of what we saw in Congress last week. What you're seeing right now is a resistance that doesn't really have any cohesion to it and is just based in absolute misery. There's nothing that you can do that's going to make some of these individuals feel better about themselves or feel better about the country. And if doubling down on Ukraine, if that is the thing, just like we talked about here locally, doubling down on 16 genders, if doubling down on Ukraine is what you think is going to win over people that have left the party, you are completely out of touch with the moment. And if you think harassing and heckling a guy who's walking the streets with his 3-year-old daughter is the best way forward, I'm going to show him, then you are more out of touch than I would have thought. 913-408-7957 on the text line and the studio line here on KCMO Talk Radio. Pete, luckily my Brookside neighbor changed their BLM sign to a Ukraine-colored tape for the tree on the city easement. I was worried that they didn't have another cause. That's well done.
No love for Lesotho.
Coming up next, did Team Trump hear a part of this show last week that resulted in a big announcement? We'll get to it on KCMO.
Hey, it's Dan Bongino. You're listening to Pete Mundo on KCMO Talk Radio, now on FM at 95.7.
I can't help but wonder, just a small part of me wondering whether or not Team Trump was listening to this show 1 week ago today when we shared some exclusive news with you here on KCMO about the debacle that has been World Cup planning in Kansas City. Because on Friday, Donald Trump signed an executive order establishing a White House task force for the 2026 World Cup. Trump will serve as the chair of the task force, while J.D. Vance will serve as the vice chair. An executive director who has not been named will manage and oversee daily operations. What's the goal of this task force? Because we know this has been sloppy here in Kansas City and how it's been handled. But the goal of the task force will be to oversee preparations for the tournament and will comprise Trump's cabinet and key government agencies. According to the official, the task force will also work with federal agencies in planning, organizing, and executing the World Cup. So you've got obviously a bunch of cities here in the U.S., including Kansas City, who are hosting games. It's in 16 cities, 48 teams playing 104 total matches. In the U.S., you've got Kansas City, along with Seattle, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Houston, Dallas, Atlanta, Miami, Boston, Philadelphia, and East Rutherford, New Jersey. And last week, we shared with you first here on KCMO that this process has not been smooth the last few weeks. Over the last few weeks, the Chiefs were supposed to start construction out at Arrowhead Stadium to basically renovate the stadium to have it ready for the World Cup next summer. And the Chiefs balked. They were supposed to start this the week the AFC Championship game happened. They delayed it about a month. They started about 10 days ago, from what I heard from people out there who were in the know at Arrowhead Stadium. Why did they delay it a month? Well, because they went to KC 2026, which is this organization that is overseeing the World Cup for Kansas City. And they said, oh, by the way, we need $10 million to start this. And KC 2026 said, no, you don't. We're not giving you any money. And the Chiefs said, no, we need $10 million. We need it because of lost revenues over the next couple of summers from concerts and events because of the World Cup we're hosting. Now, I don't understand that. It doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, you're going to make a lot of money off the World Cup, right? And yes, you have to remove some seats, but you agreed to do this. Clark Hunt is one of the reasons the World Cup is coming to Kansas City, along with Cliff Illig, who owns Sporting KC. So all of a sudden it's like, wait, we need $10 million for what? That didn't make any sense to me. And it still doesn't make any sense to me outside of being a power play.
We're trying to lift our presence on the stage as a city that can host these things so that we don't have these problems in Chicago or East Rutherford. They don't have to expand the stadium. We kind of look like goobers collectively, no matter who's at fault here.
We do.
Because now we have to make an adjustment to our stadium that seems to be lagging in its schedule.
That's exactly what's happening right now. So what happened here, from what I heard from the people who are on this KC 2026 board and people who are in the know who are not on the board, is that basically the mayor acquiesced to the Chiefs. And he said, fine, we'll give you some money. We'll give you millions of dollars. But here's the catch. I want an extra seat on the board, on the KC 2026 board. Now, why does he want that? I can't quite figure that part out. I don't know if it's just a power play for the preparations for the World Cup next year or what the deal is. But there are multiple local politicians and business executives who are on this KC 2026 board. You've got Clark Hunt and Cliff Illig. You have Kathy Nelson, KC Sports Commissioner, CEO. You have local politicians, Mike Kelly, Johnson County Chairman, Melissa Robinson, Kansas City Councilwoman, Frank White's on the board, Dina Sykes, who's a state senator from Kansas. You have some notable politicians and business leaders who are on this board. Why the mayor wants another seat on the board, I don't know. But that was apparently the deal that was cut to get the Chiefs moving because they got to get a deal done here. They have to get moving on this thing to be ready for the World Cup next summer.
Q maybe has his eye on the Monarch schedule opening up and Frank being out at first base.
Maybe that's
we
it.
need somebody to speak up for the area.
Hey, he's looking at the Monarchs road schedule and saying, we got some key meetings while Frank's going to be out of town with the Monarchs. So we got to get something figured out here. No, that could very well be true, John. I hadn't thought about that angle. But right now, you've got the city. It's not your taxpayer money. Let's also be clear on this. This is money that has been raised by this KC 2026 organization. They're the ones who are dispersing this money, but they got to fundraise through a lot of very wealthy people around Kansas City. So that's where the money's coming from. Just to be clear, it's not your money unless you are someone who gave KC 2026 a fat 7-figure check. Now, the other part of this is the money that's been given from the state of Missouri to help with renovations out at the sports complex, notably for Arrowhead. Just so we're all on the same page, the state of Missouri is given $41 million. Well, it's about $50 million in last year's budget to renovations for Arrowhead Stadium in preparation for the World Cup. That was sent to the Jackson County Sports Authority. That's the authority that oversees the Truman Sports Complex for the Chiefs and the Royals. They have the $50 million. It is not in the hands of KC 2026, and thank goodness it's not. I trust that money much more in the hands of the Sports Authority than I do a bunch of politicians and people looking for favors. I'm not saying that the Sports Authority is going to be the purest, but I trust it much more in the hands of those people than I do anybody in politics locally. And just so you know, KC 2026 tried to basically tell the Sports Authority, we'll take care of that $50 million for you. And the Sports Authority told them to pound sand, which is exactly what they should have done. Do not give this to KC 2026. The less money they're in charge of, frankly, the better. Now, if it's private people's money, if you want to give fat checks to Quentin Lucas and Frank White and Mike Kelly to do God knows what with, please be my guest. If you're trying to buy political favors, that's on you. That's your prerogative. If you think it's going to be well spent, you're a sucker. But you have every right to be a sucker. But when it comes to our taxpayer monies, no, that should stay in the hands of the Jackson County Sports Authority. And then basically what happens is the Chiefs give their receipts to the Sports Authority, and they say, hey, we spent $1 million here, $1 million there. They got to show the receipts. It's not a blank check. And that's exactly how it's supposed to be and how it should be with this project moving forward. But already it sounds like the mess is in Kansas City, and I imagine other cities in the country, is what resulted in Donald Trump signing this executive order on Friday to establish a White House task force for FIFA World Cup 2026. And already I regret this thing for the U.S. I hope it goes well. I really do. I'm not saying this to be like an anti-soccer guy. I'm not. I really hope it goes well for Kansas City. I hope it goes well for North America. But FIFA's always been a sketchy organization at best. This stuff feels like it rarely returns anything decent on its investment. And now we've got the president wasting his time on executive orders to put on soccer games next year. There's a lot of stuff to fix in the country and do for the country. And now Donald Trump having to oversee putting on a soccer event in this country feels like an enormous waste of time and resources. Coming up next, the 6 at 6. Top 6 stories in the 6 o'clock hour. We'll get to on 95.7 FM KCMO Talk Radio.
Call Mundo 913-408-7957. Now on 95.7 FM.
6:48, good morning. Happy Monday. I know still a little sleepy after the daylight saving time springing forward yesterday, but it's all good. That sun is now setting just after 7 o'clock, so I'm fired up for that. I know you are as well. Woo! All right, it's that time of the morning. Let's do it.
It's time for the 6 at 6 on 95.7 KCMO Talk Radio. Number one.
Number one is Xavier Worthy, Chiefs wide receiver. Looked like he was in some hot water legally over the weekend. Well, as it turns out, charges have been dropped. There will be no charges after an arrest of Chiefs wide receiver Xavier Worthy, who was accused of domestic assault. But as it turns out, according to his attorneys, what's going on right now is that he asked his fiancée to leave their home multiple times over the last 2 weeks upon discovering her infidelity. She refused to vacate the residence, made a number of extortive efforts prior to resorting to this baseless allegation against Mr. Worthy, according to the lawyers. The complainant further destroyed a room in the residence, scratched Mr. Worthy's face, and ripped out parts of his hair, which there is photographic evidence of. Worthy told law enforcement at the time of the incident he did not want to press charges against the complainant. So he was booked on Friday night, Saturday morning, and by Sunday, yesterday, this thing appears to be all wrapped up, at least legally speaking. Xavier Worthy has to get himself out of that relationship as soon as possible.
Number two.
All right, number two, speaking of people getting arrested, a former standout basketball player from the University of Missouri was arrested here in Kansas City in connection with an armed robbery charge in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Marcus Denman, 34 years old, and his brother Malik are charged in Tulsa County District Court with robbery with a dangerous weapon, according to online records. Now, Marcus was a former All-Big 12 standout before Missouri left for the SEC. And he got drafted by the San Antonio Spurs. He never played in the NBA. He spent the last 10 to 12 years mostly playing overseas. But he's been back coaching here in the Kansas City area. And the alleged robbery happened on January 17th when police were called to an ambush at an apartment complex in Tulsa. But he was just arrested over the weekend after the car that he was in at the time was tied back to Platte City. So that happened, and prosecutors have charged Marcus Denman and Malik Denman in connection with the robbery in Tulsa County District Court. Their bonds were set by an Oklahoma judge at $50,000 each.
Number three.
Well, number three, over the weekend, Secret Service has shot an armed man in a confrontation near the White House. And this happened at the intersection of 17th and F Streets Northwest. Saturday, local police had reported a suicidal individual possibly traveling to Washington from Indiana. Secret Service personnel later found the individual's vehicle and spotted a person on foot who matched this description. As officers approached the individual, brandished a firearm, an armed confrontation ensued, during which shots were fired by Secret Service personnel. The suspect was taken to the hospital, and his condition, as of the most recent reporting, has not been known. Two senior law enforcement officials told NBC News the man is a 27-year-old. His name is Andrew Dawson from Indiana. And Donald Trump was in Florida when this incident took place. He returned to the White House last night.
Number four.
Number four, Doge saying $312 million in loans were given to children during the COVID pandemic. I kid you not. Yes. Doge said it identified that the Small Business Administration granted nearly 5,600 loans for $312 million to borrowers who only listed owner was 11 years old or younger at the time of the loan. The loans were issued in 2020 and 2021 in the middle of the pandemic, and it's unclear at this point what they were used for. The agency wrote, while it is possible to have business arrangements where this is legal, that is highly unlikely for these 5,600 loans, as they all also used a social security number with the incorrect name. DOJ and the Small Business Administration are working together to solve the problem this week. Can you tell me how you are against this? Unless you're a fraudster or a criminal, how are you against uncovering information like this? What could you possibly have against Elon Musk and the idea of DOJ when it turns out potentially $300+ million in SBA loans were given to 5,600 different people who are supposedly 11 years old or younger? What is your downside here? What are you arguing against? Do you realize how insane you could possibly sound if you say this is a bad idea? And, I just don't like how it's being done. Okay, whatever. Tell me why it is bad that we have found out 50 days into Donald Trump's administration that $300 million may have been wasted on loans to 11-year-olds. What's your argument on that? I'd love to know it. Because this is
my
nuts.
11-year-old?
I can't speak to that, John. I don't have an 11-year-old, so it wasn't mine. But I guess they're at least 11 years old, or they're at most 11 years old.
Number 5.
All right, number 5 for the 6 at 6 here on KCMO Talk Radio. Well, Mark Carney wins the Liberal Party nomination to replace Justin Trudeau as Canada's next prime minister. Mark Carney is expected to call an election in the coming days where he will face conservative challenger Pierre Poilievre. So these two guys are going to go at it likely in late April or early May. There's an expectation that voting day will be April 28th or May 5th. But I'll tell you what, this guy, Mark Carney, is a heavy favorite. See, all the Trump trolling has not helped Pierre in this election. It was believed that he was going to have a shot as the conservative alternative up to our north. But all the 51st state stuff and the tariff stuff appears to have soured a lot of Canadians on the idea of going with a more conservative option, which means Mark Carney is the overwhelming favorite after he won the Liberal Party nomination to replace Justin Trudeau as Canada's next prime minister. But that election is expected to be taken probably in 6 or 7 weeks.
Number 6.
And I'll leave you with 2 here in number 6. We'll tie it back to where we started, which is football. Chiefs re-signing Nick Bolton, 3-year, $45 million deal for Nick Bolton to stay with the Chiefs. So Missouri's own Nick Bolton will be staying in Kansas City. And then the bonus here is Josh Allen, Bills quarterback, getting a 6-year extension, $250 million guaranteed out of the $330 million contract, which is an NFL record. He won the MVP last year, of course. He gets this 6-year extension, keeps him in Buffalo through 2030, and it is the largest guarantee ever given to an NFL player in league history. But he still can't be the Chiefs in the playoffs, so go figure. There's your 6 at 6 on KCMO Talk Radio. Coming up, we made the local news over the weekend. Did you catch this? Came together at the last minute. We'll tell you how and why regarding federal workers and what it all means next. So Friday afternoon, I got hit up by our buddy Matt Fleener, Channel 9 KMBC, and the reason he reached out to me is because I had responded to one of his posts on X where Congresswoman Sharice Davids, here on the Kansas side of the state line, was meeting with a bunch of federal employees who had been let go. And I responded to that post. I didn't think I was taking any kind of major shot, but I wrote back to Fleener's post, and it had nothing to do with Matt. It was about the post of Sharice Davids meeting with former federal workers. I wrote here, the Kansas City media industry lost many good people this week. Do they get a meeting? Has she done consistent meetings with other industries hit by layoffs in recent years? How about businesses who had to close during COVID? Or is this all just political posturing? So on Friday, I'm wrapping up the day. I actually had to run out to a lunch. I come back here to the radio station. I have a text from Fleener, and he says, hey, can you come on the news tonight, and can you do a hit with me? I said, sure. Do you want to come by the studio? So they came by at about 2 o'clock or so on Friday, stayed here, did a hit with them. And he just wanted a response, a rebuttal to, what's going on this issue. He said he reached out to some of the Kansas delegation that couldn't make it happen on short notice. So with that, he came to me. And I'm fine being the backup guy for him here. I don't mind helping out where I need to. And here's what it sounded like Friday night, Channel 9, KMBC.
Also happening now in Kansas, Representative Sharice Davids is working to help laid off federal workers.
Well, she held a roundtable today. KMBC 9's Matt Fleener showing us the impact and the reaction to those losing their jobs.
There's been a lot of talk about cutting the federal workforce. We've seen some of that impact here at the IRS in Kansas City.
That's why a former IRS worker and other workers who are no longer with the federal government or in limbo met with Congresswoman Sharice Davids on Friday. A couple took the buyout offer. A couple more were let go in their probationary period. We spoke with one worker let go and a conservative radio host about those job cuts.
Yes, this happens in the private sector. Completely agree. But there's always been an unspoken understanding that you don't make as much money in the federal government as you do in the private sector, but the trade-off is stability. And now you have lost that stability.
We all want stability, but then the marketplace has to play a role in all this. And right now the marketplace is very clear. We can't afford any of it. You can't tax your way out of it. Just there are cuts that have to be made.
Every one of those workers on Friday said their job search continues. They try to figure out what's next. Now they no longer work for the federal government. In Kansas City, Matt Fleener, KMBC 9 News.
So that was my appearance with Matt on Friday during the nightly news on KMBC Channel 9. I was happy to do it. And obviously a lot of things that we've talked about on this show over the last couple of weeks. But that one clip that stood out to me of, we're just doing a solid for our country, making less money, but we just want stability. Well, first off, how many people from the federal government are actually making less money than they would in the private sector? Has any research been done on that, or are we just assuming that? Like, if someone says that, do we just take it at face value and assume it to be true? Now, I don't deny there are some people who work for the federal government who could be making more money doing something else. I certainly believe that to be the case. But guess what? I would like to think that those are not the people who are losing their jobs. I'm pretty convinced that there are definitely plenty of individuals who are making more money from the public sector than they ever would from the private sector because, well, the skill sets don't apply to anything in the public or in the private sector. I can almost guarantee you that's the case. This notion that every person who works for the government is some kind of hero that we should be grateful for, I'm sorry, I'm not playing that game. I have zero interest in that because it's not true. Yes, there are people who serve, cops, firefighters, first responders, those who are in our military, Air Force, Navy, Army, you go across the board. Yeah, sure, I will absolutely shake their hand and thank them for their service. And there's a handful of bureaucrats that I might do the same for, and a handful of politicians I might do the same for. That's it. If you think the sob story of, oh my gosh, we are just out here doing our best, and oh boy, look at us, we're working so hard on behalf of the American people, and you must make sure you thank us for our good work because we're not making as much money as we normally would. Spare me.
How dare you?
It's insulting. It is absolutely insulting. And, of course, I got some emails from some Channel 9 viewers who I hope might be checking out the show this morning as well. Rebecca writes to me. I think her real name was probably Karen, but she chose the name Rebecca. Rebecca writes to me, do you have any idea exactly what all federal workers do to keep you safe? Okay, Rebecca. All right. Okay, I got it, Rebecca. I know. Every government employee is keeping me safe today. You're right. You got me. It's not just the cops, right? Not just, people doing actual work like that to put their lives on the line. You're right. Every bureaucrat is keeping us safe today. All 2 million of them are keeping us safe today, Rebecca. You're right. You got me. I don't know what to tell you. You nailed it there, Rebecca. Spot on.
Guys down at the post office are keeping you safe from receiving mail. So, I know that's going on.
Oh, my gosh. It's like, that's the best you got? Doug wrote to me over the weekend, Mr. Mundo. He put a W on the end of my last name. I'm not sure where that came from, but I got a Mundo. I've been called a lot of things. I have not been called a Mundo before, though, with a W.
He's a Maddow fan.
Yeah. Maybe that's what it is. He confused me with Rachel. He was watching Rachel Maddow, and he got me confused with his favorite TV show. Oh, my gosh. He writes to me that DOJ should focus on the larger programs rather than the smaller ones that are being eliminated. Tell me you haven't done anything in business without telling me you haven't done anything in business. The little things can add up to big things there, Doug. That's how it works. Of course, he says to me, as a moderate not represented by either side, I see the most wasteful and inefficient actions of the federal government in the last 2 decades for new administrations to try to tear out the work of the prior administration. No law or program is perfect when put in place. The best are refined and changed over time. No, they're not. No, they're not. We have done nothing but grow government exponentially over the last 30 years. There was never going to be a clean way to do the right thing on this front. There isn't. And the people who are complaining right now about how DOJ is going about its business, it's just a convenient excuse. It's just like the reason they think that it's most palatable to complain about DOJ. Oh, we don't like how it's being done. Please. They would find some other reason if it wasn't being done this way. You have to take just a sledgehammer to this thing. You have no choice because of how big and expansive the government has become. If you try to just kind of, go around the edges, you're not going to get anything meaningful done. You're just not. And that's the reality of the situation that we find ourselves in right now as a country. And there's not a single person who I've heard who's going to convince me why this is, not the right way to go about doing it. Whether it's emails I received after the Channel 9 hit, whether it's, Emmanuel Cleaver standing outside of buildings, screaming random thoughts.
You muster moo.
None of it is working. And the messaging around it absolutely stinks. And yes, Sharice Davids should be meeting with constituents. That's great. I applaud her for that. But you know as well as I do that that is largely driven by politics, first, second, and third. Let's be honest. It's 7:15. Good morning. Happy to be here on a Monday. Of course, it's still dark just after 7 o'clock after we sprung forward yesterday morning. But hey, the daylight on the back end, making it pretty damn good. 913-408-7957. Bottom of the hour, Gib Kerr will be here. He is the president of the Downtown Kansas City Council. What's the future for the Royals downtown? He has a statement on that he will share with us coming up on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. All right, you're thinking about that spring cleaning. The weather looks like it's finally turned, and you're also looking at that tub, that shower, and saying it's time to get something new. Well, the only name to know in Kansas City is The Plumbing Pro. And right now, The Plumbing Pro is offering up Pete's deal. Get $2,000 off. You heard that right. And 12 months, same as cash with approved credit. The Plumbing Pro is the local alternative to all the national personalities promoting tub and shower replacements on TV. They've been in business for over 40 years here in town, and Steve and his crew take that reputation in Kansas City very seriously. Save money and time. They are easy to work with, low stress, and yes, a free consultation. The Plumbing Pro is where your sales consultant remains with you throughout the entire process, start to finish. So get $2,000 off in 12 months, same as cash. Pete's deal, theplumbingpro.com, theplumbingpro.com, or call 816-763-8200.
Hey, it's Kevin Keatsman. Stick around. I'm coming up at 10 o'clock right after Pete Mundo on KCMO 95.7 FM.
Over the weekend, I saw this from our buddy Jasper Mirables, of course, the owner of Jasper's Restaurant there in South Kansas City, right off State Line Road. And it was a picture outside of his patio area. If you've ever sat and eaten dinner there or just gone to eat out on the patio, you get a nice view of the creek. You got some woods there. It's beautiful. Well, he shares a picture on his social media of a bunch of mattresses that are being propped up like a little home for homeless people. And he shared how he couldn't do anything about it. That this was the view that his patrons were going to have to look at all night. And he couldn't do anything about it. It's not his property, technically. It's the city's property. So he puts up this post on social media. I shared it when I saw it on mine. And suddenly, all of a sudden, people are snapping into action. You got people from the Parks and Rec Board who are now on it. They're commenting on my Facebook page. And they're like, hey, don't worry. We're going to do something about this. And I reached out to him. I said, who are these people? And he told me that they were folks with Parks and Rec. And they were going to work hard. This has been reported. And they're working on resolving it. Michael Meyer is one of the guys' names. So Jasper ends up taking that post down because he heard from a lot of people, City Hall, City Council, Parks and Rec. And I said to him, I said, that's why you use your platform to your benefit, not just for yourself, but for every other small business and restaurant in Kansas City that doesn't have your platform, that doesn't have your voice, that is sick and tired of the BS when it comes to property crimes, when it comes to homelessness, when it comes to not taking care of those who are footing the bill in this town. Because here's the thing. He's a nice guy, and he doesn't want to find himself in controversy. It's just not who he is. But sometimes you have no choice. And that's what he was explaining to me over the weekend. We were talking about this yesterday. And I said, so wait, did you take down the post? And he said, yeah, well, the people that I needed to get a hold of ended up reaching out to me. They saw the post. I said, okay, I understand that. I do. I totally respect that. I understand that. But please do not feel bad for anything that you did. The people in power need to know what's going on the ground. They cannot keep whistling past the graveyard, acting like everything's great, and worrying about the freaking World Cup when you've got businesses today, small businesses, who can't do anything about homeless encampments sitting outside of their restaurants, John.
Well, I'd be concerned Parks and Rec could be looking around for some queen-size mattresses to replace those. So. Yeah. No, to your point, though, I mean, this stuff migrates. If we've got the World Cup coming, we know it happens in all kinds of cities. I don't know why it wouldn't happen here, but suddenly a clean sweep goes through the week before. And suddenly these people are relocated.
Yeah, to make the city look good.
Yeah, an inner city, and suddenly they're in other parts of the town, and maybe they like it there along that creek bank. Now.
Yeah, that's impossible as well.
So we've got to keep an eye on this and monitor it from now.
He was telling me, too, something that really stood out to me, that, he'll get some of these vagrants. Can we use that word, or is it houseless individuals? First it was vagrants, then it was homeless. Now I don't know what they're calling them. It's like everything else. Every phrase has been wokeified to some degree. But vagrants will show up now in the Marco Polo Deli, and he's kicking them out. And he said some of the patrons are like, he's just looking for food. They're just looking for a meal. Okay, then you hand him your sandwich then, champ.
Right.
I mean, what are we doing here?
Help them out.
Buy them a sandwich and send them on their way. I mean, and I know, listen, you don't want to make any of this stuff political. If you're a business owner, you just want to run your business and get as many people into your business as you can. Doesn't matter what their politics are. Left, right, in the middle, who cares? But I'll tell you right now, if I'm owning a business and I'm theoretically risking my life to some degree, because you don't know who these people are, what they have on them, to kick vagrants out of the restaurant, and then the patrons, or at least a couple of patrons, are like, come on, man, they're just looking for a meal. Hey, That sandwich looks pretty good that you got handed over to him, okay?
Those are the people that just came in for a water and are hitting up on the Wi-Fi, too, right?
Yeah, that's true as well.
They're bums as well.
You know what? Give them a Ukraine flag and send them on their way. That's
There
all.
you go.
Or, I mean, geez.
There's a McDonald's across the street.
Yeah.
I'm not worth your McDonald's money.
Oh, gosh. Come on. That's right. That's the kind of attitude that's just got to drive you nuts if you are a business owner. Oh, just get him a fresh sandwich, man. Hand over yours there, buddy. Yours is looking pretty good. Buy him one. But, of course, it's never about them helping out. It's always somebody else. That's the virtuous nature of so many of these individuals. The Royals, what is their future? Gib Kerr is the president of the KC Downtown Council, and they're getting vocal. They're making a big push. They know that time is of the essence, and he will join us on how he thinks the Royals can get downtown next on KCMO.
It's Mundo in the Morning. Now on FM at 95.7. Set a preset on your radio. KCMO Talk Radio.
Kind of in this weird limbo right now that's been going on for many months, but it seems like it may be picking back up as we try to figure out the future of the Chiefs and, of course, the Kansas City Royals. And the Royals, well, at least publicly, there's not a lot of information available. Are they going to stay in Missouri? Are they going to look downtown? Is the Northland back in play? How serious of a competitor is Kansas? Gib Kerr is the president of the Downtown Kansas City Council. He joins us on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM, streaming, as always, on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Good morning, Gib. It's great to have you on the show. And from the Downtown Kansas City Council perspective, what is your pitch right now to the Royals to try to get them back into your vicinity?
Well, good morning, Pete. The Royals have been looking at a number of different sites over the last year and a half or so, but the narrative has changed now. The situation now is that the Royals are either going to be in a downtown Kansas City, Missouri stadium, or they're moving to Kansas. And so obviously, as a downtown advocate, we are pushing for the Royals to locate that stadium downtown. And it makes so much sense. It's the highest concentration of our cultural assets in town. You've got the Union Station and Crown Center and World War I Museum, the streetcar, the convention district. And, the streetcar is soon going to connect all the way from the river, the KC Current Stadium, to the plaza. And that's the highest concentration of hotels in town, restaurants, bars, and would provide the best fan experience for visitors and local fans as well. And that's really in the best interest of the Royals, too, if they want to grow the franchise value.
So are you obviously you're talking about that Washington Square Park location. Is that the location that you are pushing for far more than, let's say, the Crossroads spot or the East Village spot or anywhere else?
Well, from the Downtown Council's perspective, we're kind of agnostic as to which site the Royals choose downtown, although our understanding is that the Washington Square Park site is the only site that they're considering downtown at the moment. And that site, by the way, totally makes sense because not only is it adjacent to the streetcar, but it's within walking distance of so many hotels. I think there's like 20,000 parking spaces within about a 4-block walk. It's accessible by 9 interstate on-ramps, exit ramps. And it's part of the grid system, too, which is really important. And people overlook this a lot. But the grid system, we've got, I think 7 or 8 wide arterial roads that feed into that area. And, I'm a real estate guy, so I've studied cities over the thousands of years. There's a reason why cities have all been built on a grid system going back, to the dawn of time. Because grid systems are the most efficient way of distributing traffic, diffusing traffic. If one street's blocked, you go to the next one. And in suburban locations, you don't get that. You get like 2 or 3 points of entry, and you get bottlenecks. And so, downtown has 183,000 people there every day, 183,000, visitors, residents. So we can accommodate, 20, 30,000 people without a problem. We get 18,000 people almost all the time at the T-Mobile Center. And so, having adding another 20, 25,000 people to downtown is, not a problem.
So explain to me then, Gib, the ingress, egress of that location in particular when you talk about people going back home, let's say up north, down south. What is that? Have you gotten that far in that process in terms of what that would look like from that Washington Square Park location?
Well, it's no different from if you're going to the T-Mobile Center. I mean, everybody, no matter what direction you're coming from, you have a bevy of options available to you. And I would encourage people to go to the website. There's a volunteer group that put together a website called WeLoveKCBaseball.com, and in that WeLoveKCBaseball.com website, it lists all of the options for how you can get to that site.
Do you feel like right now, Gib, you mentioned earlier that you think it's either downtown or Kansas. Are you saying that you know that based on what the Royals have told you, or is that just based on, the public information and reporting that's been out there?
Yeah, I'm not directly in communication with the Royals, but through people who we're talking with, people are talking with the Royals. That's the feedback that we're getting.
Gotcha.
That it's down to those two options.
So what about the politics of this, of course, and, is it going back to the voters? Is it some other kind of deal? What barriers do you see existing there, and what do you hope can be done about it when it comes to the Royals, from your perspective, hopefully ending up downtown?
I'm pleased to see that the mayor is very engaged in this, and the city is working collaboratively with economic development agencies, local, state legislators, and with the governor in Jeff City. So they're exploring all options, but I think the goal is to come up with an incentives package that in some ways mirrors the Kansas Star bonds. And if you do that, you're essentially tapping into the sales taxes and the economic activities taxes, payroll taxes that are generated from the stadium. In other words, it would be a tax on the stadium and the immediate area around it. So kind of like a user fee for the fan. The fans essentially pay for it, rather than taxing all the citizens of the county or the city, and which seems more fair. That's essentially what Star bonds do. And so if they do that, it would there's a chance it may not even need to go to a public vote.
Really? So you think there's a way to do this at that Washington Square Park location without any kind of a vote of taxpayers in Kansas City or Jackson County, for that matter?
That's one of the options that's being explored. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, that location in particular is viewed as, obviously, it is a smaller location. The Royals have long talked about economic development around the stadium. So what barriers exist there for the Royals and, what they always said they wanted, which is not just a baseball stadium, but also economic development that they can make money off of around the baseball stadium?
Yeah, that's another advantage of the Washington Square Park site, is that it is the volunteer group has basically put together an assemblage there of existing sites and existing buildings that could accommodate, new office development, new hotel development, all kinds of adjacent development that would be within, 1 or 2 blocks of the new stadium. So you have an opportunity to create a ballpark village. And again, I would, direct you to that website I referenced before, welovekcbaseball.com, which kind of lays out what all those development opportunities are. The other beauty of that site, welovekcbaseball.com. The other beauty of that site is that it would require no displacement, no eminent domain. That was a problem before. That's why so many people got stirred up about the plan that was on the ballot last April, was that it required relocating, I can't remember, 20 or 30 businesses. In this case, it's the site itself is about half of it is the existing park. The other half is the Blue Cross Blue Shield property, which is being vacated.
Mm-hmm. Last thing, because it's a big deal in this town, the parking side. I see on that website, it says there's 20,000 parking spaces within 4 blocks. How many of those are taken on a regular basis? So, how many more would you have to add if you were to put a ballpark down there?
I don't think you'd have to add any. There's so much parking around that most of those parking spaces are empty at night. Most of the parking spaces are used by businesses during the day. There's on-street parking. There's the streetcar, which approaches the site both from the north and from the south. And so you could, park a few blocks away. The beauty about baseball is that it takes place in the 6 warm weather months of the year. And so, you can park several blocks away, go, meet somebody for a beer or dinner beforehand, and then walk to the game and enjoy the downtown experience. It would be a totally different experience from what people are used to, but it's the experience that especially younger fans really enjoy, really like. And that's what's revitalized cities like San Diego and Denver and Baltimore and other places that have downtown stadiums.
Last thing, Gib Kerr, president of the Downtown Kansas City Council. How serious of a threat do you think the state of Kansas is right now?
You know, it's something that Kansas City, Missouri has to take seriously. I think it's kind of like the easy button for the Royals. They can just go, buy 40 acres really cheap and design it every way they want. And, Kansas is dangling all kinds of money in front of them. I just think it would be a shame to do that. I think it would be, in a lot of ways, repeating the same mistake we made 50 years ago by moving out of the downtown, out of the urban core to a suburban site. And I don't think it would be good for the franchise in the long run either.
Mm-hmm. Well, Gib, thank you very much for being on KCMO. We'd love to have you back as this process moves along. Appreciate your time.
You bet. Thank you, Pete. Have a good day.
You as well. That is Gib Kerr. He is the president of the Downtown Kansas City Council on 95.7 FM. Something to definitely keep an eye on. Coming up, the good, the bad, and the ugly from the weekend. We will get to next on 95.7 FM, streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app.
If it's happening in KCMO, it's on KCMO 95.7 FM. Here's Pete Mundo.
7:50, happy Monday. The sun is starting to rise, of course, after we sprung ahead yesterday, and let's do it on a Monday.
It's time for the good, the bad, and the ugly on KCMO Talk Radio. Now on 95.7 FM.
Well, that's where I'm going to start. The good from the weekend. Springing forward, baby. Let's go. Let's go. That's right. We have sprung forward. It will not be dark before 7 p.m. in Kansas City until October. I love the sound of that, man. I love it. I love it. I love it. And glad that we are now back to the time of year when we have to use the blackout curtains on the girls' rooms. Because if not, they ain't falling asleep anymore. But that's a good problem to have. Just, break out the blackout curtains and you're off to the races. That's how it goes. So I know some people are hoping that this is forever now, that we will never fall back again. I don't feel that way. I hope we do fall back. I think we need to fall back in November. It's not as long as it used to be. It's all of 4 months, give or take. But Trump said it last week in the Oval Office. He goes, this is a 50-50 issue. And he, by Donald Trump's standards, basically didn't have an opinion on daylight saving time. He just said 50-50 issue. Some people like more daylight, but some people don't want to be sending their kids to school in the dark in the winter. And he's right about that. He's absolutely right about that. So I hope that the government does not make this the permanent time. I hope that we fall back for a few months. As much as I don't like the dark, I do think it's necessary. And by the way, the further north you go, the worse it's going to get with people sitting in the dark until 9 o'clock in the morning. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So nothing's perfect. We got a good balance right now. Let's just leave it the way it is and enjoy the sunlight now until after 7 p.m., at least until October here in Kansas City. Now the bad from the weekend. Kansas City radio took a big hit last week. There were multiple layoffs, not here at Cumulus Media, but at another radio group in town. And that resulted in the most successful radio show for the last generation in Kansas City, Johnny Dare's show, getting the boot, getting shown the door, and signing off on Friday. And a lot of people asked me over the weekend, wow, this is potentially good for you. I mean, you might get some of the listeners from the Johnny Dare show who might want some more spoken word. Now, I don't view it that way. I don't. He is good for Kansas City radio. Having talented people on the radio is good for Kansas City radio. Because it keeps people on the platform. It keeps people engaged with the medium in this town. And that's what we need more of. Now, we're proud of what we've done with this show. It has been very competitive in key demographics that we appeal to. And we've been right up there near the top now for several months, and we're very proud of that. But I didn't view that moment last week when I saw the news and be like, oh, this is great for us. No, this is not. First off, it makes the industry look beyond stupid when you take people like that off the air. Even if they're making a lot of money, you figure out a way to make it work. If people are doing a good job and putting on a good show and it's working for advertisers, well, you figure out a way to keep it going. You don't have somebody go line item by line item and say, too much money here. We'll get rid of that. We'll get rid of this. Someone's sitting in New York or somewhere else making these decisions. It's not how you do it. So no, it was not a good week. I didn't view it as a good week. I didn't view it as a net positive. I also want to compete against smart people and talented people. And unfortunately, we lost that ability last week with that decision to take Johnny Dare's show off the air, John.
John's first to give credit to the listeners, saying that it was all them and that he was just the middleman between the radio station. Not just the middleman, brother. It takes the middleman to do that job. We need somebody to be the pivot, and you were that guy. You connect people. The rest of us are out here, we're floundering around, and radio stations come on, hey, we're number one for fun, everybody. We're giving away $250. No. Johnny had people who were saying, look, I got $250. I'm going to help out this guy down the street from me.
Yeah.
So that middleman is key. And to your point, that talent, to have the talent to be that middleman, to connect so many people, to feel everybody feels like they know Johnny.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't meet strangers.
And you
right?
know him very well.
Well, I've known him since they hired him. I was at Q104 when they did Z-Rock, him and Greg were on for like an hour, so he was just starting out. But he's a person with that natural ability.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you turn on the microphone, it comes out,
And I didn't hear the show a lot for obvious reasons, but when I would catch it, listen, I get it. He was damn good at what he did. Now, maybe some listeners come over this way. We're not doing a lot of TNA over here. I know that was probably an overblown part of the show.
Sure.
But, I won't be talking about different toys that are used in different settings and things like that, unless it's a politician, unless some politician ends up, being a total freak and
Jeffrey
we find out about it.
Toobin,
Yeah.
we get some Toobin things.
Yeah, I mean, if Jeffrey Toobin's, having a blast on Zoom, then yeah, I mean.
The issue is they're not whacking enough.
If that's what's going on with politicians and some people in the news, I'll talk about it, but that's probably the extent of it, John.
The parameters were a lot wider on his show, but we're both talking about humanity.
That's exactly right. So I was saddened by that news last week.
Yeah, we'll give him a good drop every now and then.
People are aroused.
Yeah.
I haven't seen people so aroused in a very, very long time.
Exactly. Yeah, well, if Chuck Schumer goes there, we'll go there. But that's probably the extent of it. So that was the bad from the weekend. That was not good news for Kansas City. And the ugly. Vice President J.D. Vance, walking with his 3-year-old in Cincinnati over the weekend, gets confronted by a bunch of boomer, gray-haired, 65-year-old super liberal white women while he's walking his 3-year-old. And this is what it sounded like.
Trump, America's Hitler. What changed?
Cell phone video shows the moment Vice President J.D. Vance was approached by pro-Ukraine protesters in Cincinnati, Ohio.
People are dying.
The protesters were on their way to a pro-Ukraine rally nearby when the chance encounter with the vice president occurred.
My 3-year-old daughter now, and I told you, I talked to you for 5 minutes.
Signed up for this job.
And now,
That's what you agreed. Yeah, why people are yelling at
You signed up for the job. This is what you agreed to. He agreed to getting harassed by a bunch of old woke boomers with his 3-year-old daughter in a stroller. Get a freaking life. Screaming about Ukraine. My goodness, these people are out of touch. So out of touch, not understanding the moment. And he's being a gentleman. I understand you got to talk to your constituents, but holy cow. That was so out of line. So insulting. And these people think it makes them look good. That's the craziest part. There's the good, the bad, and the ugly. There is a firestorm brewing on one major cultural issue we'll get to next. There is something happening on a very key issue on one side of the political aisle, and I am fascinated by it. 8:05, good morning, happy Monday. Glad you're here on KCMO. There is a movement away from men competing in women's sports. The question is, how does the left get out of it? This conversation kickstarted last week when Gavin Newsom, the California governor, launched his podcast with Charlie Kirk, who is a conservative commentator, radio, podcast, does the whole deal, YouTube, everything else. And Gavin Newsom admitted that it is inherently unfair to have men in women's sports. And now there is a movement to figure out how to get out of this deal.
Like, you right now should come out and be like, you know what? The young man who's about to win the state championship in the long jump in female sports, that shouldn't happen. You as the governor should step out and say no.
No, and I appreciate.
But like, would you do something like that? Would you say no men in female sports?
Well, I think it's an issue of fairness. I completely agree with you on that. So that's easy to call out, the unfairness of that. There's also a humility and a grace.
All right, stop right there, Gavin Newsom. He opened up the door to his party, admitting that they have been on the wrong side of this. And this was a topic that came up over the weekend in multiple Sunday shows. You had, let's start with, where do we want to start here? There were a couple of them, actually, 3 of them. Let's start with Adam Schiff. What does Trump call him? Adam Schiff, the California congressman. They call him like pencil neck.
Shifty Shift.
Yeah, that's right. Shifty Shift, pencil neck. I don't know. He's got a few nicknames for the guy. So Adam Schiff is on ABC, and he gets asked about the issue. And I'll tell you what, they are now going to go down the road of, we think this is a local issue. They're going to try to stay out of it.
Look, I played in sports. Our kids played in sports. I want all young people to have the experience of playing in sports. Every young person. And I want those sports to be fair. I want those sports to be safe. And I have confidence that local schools and local communities can make those decisions without the federal government making them for them.
But is he right
again,
on that? Is he right on that?
I think to the degree, to the degree though, I think as a political matter, that we remove the focus from where most Americans are concerned, and that is they're concerned about their ability to provide for their family. I think to the degree that we get away from that, that's a mistake.
So now they're going down the road of, well, this is like a local issue. Wow. Nothing like finding yourself on the wrong side of an 80-20 issue and trying to figure out how to wiggle your way out of it by setting up the whole, we're going to let the local communities figure it out. They are trapped on the issue, and they are totally incoherent on the issue. And on top of that, I guess the Dems are in favor of abolishing the Department of Education and government mandates. That would be my understanding of this. See, they have twisted themselves into such a pretzel on this thing. They're mad about the Department of Education possibly going away. They love government mandates. They always have. But now on this issue, they're trying to wiggle out of it and back out of it by being like, well, you know, that'll be handled locally. We'll stay out of that because they know they're on the wrong side. I mean, they spent the last 5 years basically supporting this craziness, supporting men in women's bathrooms, supporting men in women's sports, supporting women losing to men in athletics under the guise of, well, equality, which is insane to suggest. But it's the hill they chose to die on. And now, as they're like one final shot away from getting killed on the issue, they're like, wait, I don't want to die on this hill anymore. That's what's happening. They realize the American people overwhelmingly disagree with them on this. These are not 60-40 issues. These are easily 80-20 issues. And the whole idea of like standing up for women, I guess, is a distant memory for them. Because that's how they should be, and that's how this conversation should be framed. We are protecting women's sports. And as the father of 3 young daughters, that's how it should be framed. Protecting women in their own athletics. Like last week at Trump's speech, who did he have up there? He had up a young lady who got concussed after she got spiked in the face in a volleyball game by a dude? Like, who's going to defend that? Who is possibly going to defend that? So that's how you get Adam Schiff shifting his way around that conversation. And then on NBC's Meet the Press yesterday, Elise Slotkin, senator from Michigan, also in a tough spot. And what does she go back to? Same thing as Schiff, local control.
Senator, do you agree with Governor Newsom?
Well, look, I think, you'll have to talk to Mr. Newsom and his podcast, and we're all talking about it now because it's, good controversy. For me, I grew up playing 3 seasons of sports. In Michigan, sports is like our religion, right? I wouldn't be here, I think, without the leadership training that I got in women's sports.
Oh, answer the question.
But for me, it's like, let the local community figure this out, right? In Michigan, we have a process in place where if someone who's born a boy wants to play in women's sports, you have to get a waiver. We've had it happen 2 times in our entire state. So let the local communities, just like everything with schools, handle that issue. For me, though, I think, this issue is being sort of brought up in order to make sparks and see sparks fly.
Avoid, push down local. We're not involved with this. Listen, it's a simple question. Do you think a guy should be able to play a volleyball game and spike a girl in the face? Yes or no? Just answer the question. It's really not a difficult question. It's a yes or no question. Do you think that should be allowed? Are you okay with that? Do you accept that? Do you want more of that? Don't say, well, it doesn't happen that frequently. A lot of bad things don't happen that frequently, but we can all agree they're bad things, right? This is the same kind of a deal. Do you think this is bad or not? Do you think this is fair to young women or not? That's it. But you can tell they're trying to back off the issue. They've gone too far. Now, I don't think the protesters in Kansas City over the weekend got the national memo. There was a big rally down on the plaza this weekend. Looks like, 200-300 people showed up with signs ripping bigoted Republicans and do-nothing Democrats. This was on the plaza Saturday afternoon. And there were a lot of signs out there. And I think my favorite one was this, that once again ties into this whole thing that these individuals don't realize what happened in November and why things turned out the way they did. Here's a sign that I'm looking at from Saturday's protest down on the plaza. Trump says there are only 2 genders, and it has the circle arrow to the right and circle plus sign down for, women and men. And the sign reads, and it's being held up by some old guy, big old white beard, probably 70 years old. Looks like he maybe got lost and someone's paying him to hold up the sign. I'm not quite sure. But he says, Trump says there are only 2 genders. He is wrong again. And the guy has those circles, where you would draw out different genders. And he has 16 different options on there. 16 different options. It's like, brother, I don't know what you're smoking. I know that, you can now smoke in Missouri. And trust me, where was I the other day when I was at T-Mobile last week chaperoning a kindergarten trip? I walked into the men's room. I'm like, gosh, this thing smells and reeks of weed. This is not cool. But, man, you got some good stuff over there if you think there are 16 different options. 913-408-7957 on KCMO. Jay's in Gladstone. Go ahead, Jay.
Hey, Pete, good morning. I'm a little confused. Are these the same Democrats that were so upset about Roe versus Wade being sent back to the local people to figure things out? Now wanting things figured out by the locals?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point. That is part of the hypocrisy here, Jay. Thank you. They love federal government power. They love centralized power on basically everything, except for now, the guy showing up in the girls' volleyball game and spiking a girl in the face and knocking her unconscious. That should be handled locally. Everything else, we'll keep that with a growing bureaucracy at the federal level. Thank you, Jay. I appreciate that note. Coming up, EJ Antoni is an economist with the Heritage Foundation. He is going to be joining us, talk about the jobs report and where the economy is broadly headed from here. There's a lot of fear right now in the markets that things are going to take a turn for the worst. What does he think? And then bottom of the hour, you do not want to miss this in-studio conversation. A Prairie Village resident, her name is Carolyn Bond. She is the ex-wife of the late Kip Bond, Missouri U.S. Senator. She has been ragging her local municipality about out-of-control bills, and they are doing nothing about it. We will share that story with you on KCMO.
Hey, it's Kevin Keatsman. Stick around. I'm coming up at 10 o'clock right after Pete Mundo on KCMO 95.7 FM.
821, good morning. It's great to have you here on a Monday on KCMO. EJ Antoni, an economist for the Heritage Foundation, is here. And he had some great tidbits on this jobs report on Friday that came in below expectations. But I wanted to bring him on to talk about it because there are just things in this jobs report that need to be viewed at as the positive that they are. EJ, good morning. It's great to have you here. What stood out to you when you looked at that jobs report on Friday and what it means for the economy at large?
Well, the number of federal workers who lost their jobs, and that may sound bad, right? We don't want people to lose their jobs, but the fact of the matter is we have way too many federal workers, and a lot of them aren't even doing anything productive. They're doing things that are counterproductive. So yes, it's good that we're trimming the federal workforce, and yes, that's actually happening now. Despite record growth over the last several years, that's finally coming down.
One of the things that I would highlight every month under Joe Biden with his jobs report is that the government was always 1, 2, or 3 in terms of job creators. I use my air quotes when I say job creators because the government inherently doesn't create anything. So when you look at these numbers and you see that 93% of the job growth in February was in the private sector, and then the government payrolls grew at their slowest pace in 10 months, well, to me, that's a sign that we are getting the economy back to where it needs to be, which is having success in the private sector first before anything else. Do you sense this is a trend that will continue in the months ahead?
Exactly. That's exactly right. But, people need to remember that the way this shows up in the statistics is actually as a negative, just like the way it showed up in the statistics over the last several years was a positive. So just because the numbers look good, these different macroeconomic indicators that we like to use, doesn't necessarily mean people's lives are getting any better. Ask yourself, every time we had one of these blowout jobs reports where all of these government jobs were created, did your life actually get better? Did your cost of living go up or go down? Did your standard of living go up or go down? So again, just because the macroeconomic indicators look great, that doesn't mean you're better off. For crying out loud, in 1 month, about 700,000 additional people responded saying they were employed by the government under Joe Biden. That was in a single month, but I don't think people's lives got better because of that.
That's so true. Now, detoxing, as you called it, from this economic addiction could be painful, but it will lead to long-term health and wealth. It's always a fine line for politicians, right? There could be some pain here, but detoxing from this economic addiction. What is this economic addiction that you describe, and how much pain could there potentially be because of it?
Well, what we've essentially had over the last several years has been government taking on trillions of dollars in debt in order to hand it out to people to keep consumer spending numbers artificially high, and also hiring people to either not work or do work that really didn't add anything to the nation's bottom line. Things like bureaucrats and regulators. So all of that, again, makes things look good on paper, but it's very much like taking a drug where you may feel good while it's happening, but it's doing nothing for your long-term health. It's actually obviously deteriorating it. So when you go through that detox process, you feel like garbage, right? Any of us who have had too much to drink one night knows how terrible it feels the next morning and how tempting it is to just go back to the hair of the dog. But that's not how you get to long-term health. And so in the short term, you will have these different government statistics look terrible because it will look like consumer spending goes down. It will look like jobs go down. But this is actually the path to economic health. Just like making the numbers look good was not the path to economic health, sometimes making the numbers look bad, believe it or not, is.
EJ Antoni, Heritage Foundation, is on KCMO. I saw this post on X from a guy named Peter Schiff. I know you know him. The government will soon officially acknowledge the recession we've been in for years, but which was covered up by fake data. Voters weren't fooled, which is why they elected Trump. But the media narrative will blame the recession and the rise of inflation on tariffs and DOGE. What is your analysis of that and how it could play out?
I think that's a pretty accurate assessment. Again, what we've seen over the last several years has been people's quality of life going down, not up. What you could afford with your weekly paycheck, I don't care how big the paycheck was, what the paycheck could actually buy, that's been going down, not up. Does that sound like an economic expansion to you, or does that sound like a recession? So again, just because the government has artificially inflated these different numbers to make them look good in the news headlines doesn't mean people's lives have actually gotten better. You can afford less today than you could 4 years ago, period, full stop. Explain to me how that is not recessionary. So, what is essentially going to happen now is all of these different statistics, all of this government data is going to catch up to the reality that Americans have already been experiencing literally for years now. And when that happens, it will look bad in the headlines. But again, it's just an acknowledgement of where we've been, not where we're going.
And how about this, too? And you shared this on Friday. I thought it was a great point. For the first time in 15 months, annual job growth among native-born Americans exceeded that of foreign-born workers. In basically the first month of Donald Trump being in office. What can we attribute that to? And how important is that for, Main Street? Forget Wall Street for a second, but Main Street.
That's that last point you just said, that's huge. This is something the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has been hammering on. He has said, look, Wall Street did just fine the last 4 years. It's time to focus on Main Street and make sure the average American can actually afford groceries and rent, right? So what's essentially happening right now, when we look at the numbers, it appears like we have a lot of foreign-born who are illegal, and they are essentially self-deporting. They're not trying to get work anymore, or employers are saying, you know what, it's not worth the risk anymore of employing these people illegally. And so increasingly, we're already starting to see a shift away from foreign-born employment and to native-born Americans getting jobs. That's a great sign, in my opinion. And on top of that, one of the things we have to remember is that when everyone essentially starts out their career, their first job, right, it's a low skill or no skill job. Well, if you import a ton of foreign labor that has no skills or is low skilled, guess what? They are all competing with Americans who are just trying to start their career, which makes it impossible for a lot of those Americans to start their career. And so this represents, I think, a big shift away from people not getting into the labor force. They're starting to get into the labor force now. And again, it's amazing how this is just the first month and we're already seeing those positive results.
Well said. EJ Antoni, Heritage Foundation, doing great work. EJ, thank you so much for being here on KCMO. As always, we appreciate the insight, and we'll talk to you soon, my friend. Have a great day.
You too. Thanks for having me.
All right, EJ Antoni, outstanding job. Find him on X at Real EJ Antoni. Doing great work. Coming up next, we are going to talk to a Prairie Village resident and councilwoman as they try to battle a $1,200 water bill. Skip Bond's ex-wife will share the story next.
Hey, it's Dan Bongino. You're listening to Pete Mundo on KCMO Talk Radio, now on FM at 95.7.
All right. Well, this story caught my eye over the weekend. I have not seen it reported anywhere in local media. And it was around a resident in Prairie Village getting stuck with a $2,100 water bill. So that would be the equivalent of 260,000 gallons of water usage a month, when normally these bills were $30-$40. And this is around residents Carolyn Bond, who is joining us in studio, along with Prairie Village Councilwoman Lori Sharp, who is here. So, Lori, let's start with you. The backstory here and how we got here is what exactly? What's going on?
Good morning, Pete. Yes, I had a resident reach out to me, which happens frequently. I get residents 5-10 times a week about their trash or speed bumps or the shop owners in Prairie Village, just local problems that I dig in and help people. So I had a resident reach out to me about her water bill. And so I dug into it, and she only uses, most of her bills are $25 to $40 a month. And she had hip surgery on July 1st, and she came back and she had a bill for $2,100. And the water one was coming after her. And I found out during the process that the people on the board for Water One are all elected people. They make $60,000 a year. They're elected people, and they were not working or collaborating with my resident about her water bill. She had 2 master plumbers come and check her water area in her house. There were no leaks. There were no problems. She went back to them. She's been to 2 board meetings, worked with their legal department. And bottom line is they finally changed the water meter. The water meter was 25 years old, and water meters usually only last 15 years. As soon as they changed the meter, the water bill, the water estimates all of a sudden dropped dramatically and was back to normal. So it seems to me, I'm not a water expert, but it seems to me that something might have been wrong with the meter. And instead of working with her or helping her, they're going to cut off her water April 18th. And I have this 85-year-old resident who's living in her house now, staying up at night, worrying about this bill, and worrying about her water being cut off.
So Carolyn Bond is here on KCMO. So Carolyn, despite them basically proving that, the meter may have been off here, clearly was off, they're not giving you any break on that $2,100 bill?
They've really dug in from the get-go, and no matter what defense I offer, they say, well, it went through the meter and you owe it.
So what have you've been going to the water meetings or city council? How has this gone for you? What have you been doing?
Well, I've been doing a lot of research. I knew absolutely nothing about water meters, and now I've become an expert.
There's something you probably never thought you'd be or wanted to be, frankly.
Never. And the life of a water meter is typically 15 to 20 years. And mine, we finally discovered, but not until November the 4th, was 25 years old. And I was able to go back into my usage portal and discovered that starting in May of 23 all the way, I think to May of 24, the water company had used estimated usage, not meter usage, yet the bill says it's done by meter. And I discovered there's something called the Kansas Corporation Commission, which governs gas, electric, and water companies. And estimated bills are only allowed for a short period of time. And when they're used, they have to say on the bill in big type, estimated. And when I say estimated, these bills showed zero consumption for 30 days. And then for one day, I'd be charged for 1,000. A typical bill of 30 days would read 30 gallons, 15 gallons,
You'd get random 1,000-day bills.
And that happened for 12 months.
So
just before this high usage period, which was not quite 2 months long.
Did any of your neighbors deal with this or no?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
I mean, I haven't broadcast it and I haven't taken a poll,
Mm-hmm.
but I know from all the research I've done that this does happen, and that some companies will use the estimated, and then you'll get, they call it a shock and awe bill.
Yeah.
Well, mine was a $2,100
Wow.
shock and awe bill.
So
and then the late charges start in a security fee of over $700. And they refuse to, hear my side. I mean, they've just dug in and said, the meter said you used it, so we're going to bill you for it.
There's just, wow, there's no budging. That's unbelievable. Prairie Village resident Carolyn Bond and Councilman Lori Sharpus here on KCMO Talk Radio. So your water is going to be turned off in about 5 weeks unless you pay this $2,100 bill.
Well, it's not 21 anymore.
What is it now?
Now it's, I think, 3,400.
3,400.
Right, with all the late charges.
With all the late charges.
Because I dug in, because I knew it couldn't be accurate. And
wow.
I dug in because I knew it was wrong, but I also didn't want anybody else to have to go through this.
Mm-hmm.
This all started when I just had hip surgery. And in the surgery, my hip and my femur were broken, and I was in a rehab center for the first 2 months of this trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still using a cane and a walker, so I'm not totally out of the woods yet. But I thought, this shouldn't happen to anyone. And so I fought the battle. I hope in the end it will be a winning battle, but they're determined.
What's next? Is there a next to follow up, a meeting, or?
Well, I had my final
hearing? What is it?
Well, I was given 15 minutes.
Oh, my gosh.
To present my case before the board, and that was the second week in February. And I did get 2 out of 7 votes, which I was surprised at.
You need a majority to vote for you?
Yeah.
You need 4 to 7 on this Water One board.
4 out of the 7.
4 out of the 7.
Yeah.
Wow. So, Lori, what, from your perspective, what can be done here? I mean, I think bringing awareness to this is important. It's shameful it has to be done, but what do you see as the next steps here?
That's a great question. So for my role, what I do with my residents, it's the same as when I was an occupational therapist, is I just try to present the facts. I try to advocate for my residents. It makes me feel so sad that, she's actually not even in my ward, but in the city, that she's up at night, she's going over to small claims court, she's doesn't have the funds to hire an attorney or someone to help advocate for her. So that's why I'm just trying to bring awareness so that people can understand what's going on. And maybe I actually called the city and talked with our public works man who always helps me out with the different residents. And he's just such a great guy. And he contacted Water One and basically got the same story, the same story that she had, and they're not going to help. And that's it. So the city did what it could. So I'm just trying to help advocate for her and help spread awareness. I mean, if you look at the tank for 260,000 gallons, that is a large industrial water tank. And this, and Carolyn lives in a smaller, a little bit more dense area, very small yards, so it wouldn't be an irrigation system. It couldn't be a running toilet. So it's just illogical what they're doing, and I think it's wrong, and I fight for things that I think are wrong.
Well, as someone noted here on the text line, Water One may not admit liability because then they will have issues with all the other older water meters and outdated water meters that may be out there.
But isn't that sad?
Yeah. It's horrible.
I think that's their duty.
Yeah.
They're the board members are collecting $60,000 a year. The The company itself is collecting money from all the residents and good for them for keeping our water. Water is such a natural resource, an important natural resource, but they have a duty to do it the right way and not come after 85-year-old ladies.
Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you what, I mean, these are people who are elected onto this Water One board, right?
That's what I keep saying. I write a newsletter and it says local politics matter, and I have realized so much how important it is to elect people who are willing to listen to the residents and advocate for the residents.
Well, I would like to hear from anybody who is dealing with this anywhere. I mean, if we can bring some awareness to this, you can reach out to us. You can call. You can email me, pete.mundo@cumulus.com, because if this is a potentially bigger issue than we know, we want to bring awareness to it. Carolyn, what do you want to make sure people know about your situation and just in general, message for the public and Water One as we try to get this thing under control for you?
Well, I never really paid any attention to my water bill because it was $25 or $35 and compared to gas and electric
pretty
bill,
cheap compared to the others.
And I never paid any attention. And I guess what I would say is look at the fine print.
Yeah.
And what happens often is these estimated bills, which mine were for a year, and then after the new meter was installed, they disappeared. Then the water companies, I'm not saying that Water One did this definitely, but I know other water companies add what they call a shock and awe bill to make up because they underestimated the water usage. Well, they overestimated mine. So I guess I would say pay attention and look at the fine print and fight for what's right, basically, which is what I'm doing. And sometimes I wake up after a sleepless night and I think, why am I doing this? But I'm doing it because somebody has to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. $3,400 water bill. That is unbelievable. Wow. Well, Carolyn, thank you for being here. Thank you for being willing to share your story. And Lori Sharp with, of course, the Prairie Village City Council. Thank you, Lori, and we appreciate you both being here. Any final word of advice from your end?
Thanks for always advocating for the residents here in Johnson County. I think you do a great job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks,
913, you're welcome.
Pete.
Thank you, Carolyn. I appreciate it. 913-408-7957. That's how you get a hold of us on KCMO Talk Radio. The studio line and the text line. And do you have pictures there, Carolyn, I can share? Okay. I'm going to grab some photos just for proof on this so you can see it. We'll post it up on social media as well. That way, hopefully, you can get some traction there. 913-408-7957 on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM.
You're listening to Mundo in the Morning on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM.
What an amazing story for all the wrong reasons. Carolyn Bond was just in studio. She's the ex-wife of Kip Bond, of course, former Missouri U.S. Senator, and Lori Sharp, who is a Prairie Village City Council person, and she's got a $3,400 water bill. And, I mean, this complete clown show, the Water One Board, that you elect will not do anything about it. They're just like, oh, that's what the meter says. Is that not the most government answer of all time? Your water bill is $30, $40, and she's getting the runaround of, just going by the meters. Then they magically get a new meter in there, and the bill's back to where it's supposed to be. But she's fighting it. Credit to her. She's fighting it, man, at 85 years old.
And there are tears for layoffs.
I know.
Region, right?
I
This is
know.
exactly what happens when you come up against government agencies.
Exactly right. Thank you for tying this all together very well, John. 913-408-7957. Let's go to Spencer on KCMO. What's up, Spencer?
Hi, Pete. How you doing?
All right, man. What's happening?
Oh, I'm doing great. I'm having the same issue with my water bill. We moved in, me and my fiance, at the end of November, and January's bill and February is saying we use around 1,800 to 2,000 gallons a month. And this month, I just got my bill on Friday, and it's saying we use like 14,500 gallons of water. And now I called the water services, and I told them what the issue was. And I was like, hey, there's no possible way I could have used 14,000 gallons of water. That's 12,000 gallons more than I've ever used in a month. And so they went into my account, looked at my meter, and gave me the whole runaround as well. The meter said for 5 days here, you use 2,000 gallons of water a day. And then it went back to normal. And I said, well, I didn't fix anything, and problems don't just fix themselves. So something's got to give here.
So what are you doing now? What's next?
I think I'm going to have to call him again today with a little bit more persuasion in my tone, I guess. I'm not 100% sure. But I don't know. I feel like I'm pretty helpless. It's my bill is usually no more than $100, and now it's up to $400 that I got to pay. I mean, it says it's due now.
Hey, can you email me and let me know what happens?
Yeah, I will.
Or just
of
just
course.
social media, whatever. But
Yeah, my fiance's mom posted it on her Facebook, and everybody's like, well, do you have a leaking toilet, this and that? And I mean, like I said, we didn't fix anything, and I noticed 12,000 gallons of water in my house, or, you know, if it was outside in the yard somewhere with how wet it is, I'd still think I'd notice 12,000 gallons.
I think you might. All right. Well, hit me up on any of the social media, or just email me, because I want to keep tabs on what happens with you there, Spencer.
Yeah, they basically just said the meter went back to normal after 5 days, and it's on me now.
Wow. I'm sorry, man. Please keep me posted. I mean that, all right?
I will. I'll reach out to you on the good old X.
All right. That sounds great, man. I'll be looking
All
for
right,
it.
thanks for listening to me.
Thank you. Thank you, Spencer. That is insane. Now, think about that. Spencer just said 14,000 gallons, right? He normally uses 2,000. Carolyn, they claimed, used 260,000 gallons. 260,000 gallons is what Water One claims she used. 85 year. What would an 85? That's like half of an Olympic pool. What's she doing? Oh, you got to have some common sense. I know you can hide behind the bureaucracy, but have some common sense. And as John notes, now the notion is, boy, I can't get rid of any federal employee ever. Man, you guys are missing the boat here. Real quick, Jonathan in Kansas City. I got 30 seconds.
I'm just going to say, like they said, oh, we have to proceed with shutting off the account. Look, during COVID, they did not continue shutdowns because of the crisis that the situation presented. They made an exception for years on end.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know why they don't do that here. They had the power during COVID. And so it's like, listen, COVID has set the precedent for our society. You had that power before. You need to use it now, and then litigate it in court and prove your case before a judge, like you would when you're fighting the IRS and tax court. They need to fight it.
Thank you, Jonathan. I agree. But you know what? A lot of people are just going to say, I don't know. I don't have the time, the wherewithal. Got to fight, 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 fight. As some would say, fight, fight, fight. Meantime, I'm sure all the local TV stations have 7 more reports lined up today on government employees getting laid off while this stuff's happening around town. Coming up, one of our favorite local business owners in Kansas City dealing with the homeless crisis in town. And we got to bring awareness to this as well because, once again, other media won't in Kansas City. We'll get to it next. You hate to see it. Businesses in Kansas City who are just trying to serve the public, make money, obviously, bring something of value to their communities, and they got to deal with too much of the nonsense that is happening all over town. I saw this over the weekend, and I made sure that I brought attention to it on social media, and it certainly got the attention of the right people, and that was our good buddy Jasper Mirables of Jasper's restaurant here in Kansas City, dealing with his patrons having to look back out over the patio, a beautiful setting there at Jasper's, and stare at a bunch of mattresses as part of a mini homeless encampment. Well, things are, I hope, getting taken care of. It seems like they are on the issue, but it's still a broader problem that Kansas City is facing. Jasper Mirables is here on KCMO. What's going on, my friend? Take me through what happened this weekend.
Hey, good morning, and thank you very much. Well, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Saturday, we're getting ready for dinner hour, sold-out restaurant. Watts Mill is busy as can be. I mean, spring was back, and somebody decides to bring 3 mattresses to the back of the trail right behind the restaurant, and a couple of grocery carts, and a couple of bags filled with groceries and other things, and just plopped them down right on the middle of the trail, blocked the trail, and left a nice view for my guest that evening.
Now, take me through why you couldn't just go out there and remove the mattresses yourself.
Well, I could, but first of all, my employees, they're a little busy on Saturdays preparing food and kind of getting ready for our customers, a usual Saturday. But more than that, I wasn't going to touch those mattresses. I don't know where they came from. I don't think they came from someone's home. They had some needles in them. They had other things on them. I would not touch those mattresses in 100 years.
They were that filthy. All right. They had needles. I mean, I understand your employees not going near them, but that is your property that they dumped it on. But obviously you got needles involved. You're not coming in within a 10-foot pole of that stuff.
And here, that's the thing. That's what people don't realize. You walk on those trails. My grandchildren go down there. They go to the park, and you have to see the needles and more you would not believe. I mean, most of the time, their clothes are off. They're getting, this time of year, it happens in the spring and summer, taking the clothes off, going to take a bath in the Watts Mill, in the creek right there. People don't want to see that. People, I'm sorry, I'm a feeder. You know me, Pete. That's my job. I see somebody, and I make sure they have food. I mean, come on, I have the availability. We're very fortunate. We're in the restaurant business. That's what we do. You don't want to see anybody hungry. But you know what? When you see people in this position, when you see them like that and what they're doing, and when the availability of help is there and people are begging you to come get help and you won't get it, but you'd rather sit there and harass the customers. You want to harass the people down at the creek, down at the park. I can't even tell you, Pete, how many times we have asked people to leave the Marco Polos, leave Jasper's dining room. Yes, the dining room. They get in the dining room, and they're going up to customers asking them for money. How many times they go into the parking lot? I mean, this happens 5, 6, 10 times a week. And it's not an attack. They just walk right up to them and kind of quarter them at their car, or they're going to the dining room. I need some money. I need $1. I need $2. Give me some money. Give me some money. And the one man he works. Now, I'm going to tell you, Pete, he works. Yes, there's an island across the street in the Price Chopper parking lot. He works that island. He tells Lawrence, who's been with me for 43 years, everybody in town knows Lawrence. He worked a grill outside for so many years, grilling sausages. A hard worker. He gets there at 8 in the morning, goes home sometimes 8, 10 at night. He goes outside to have a break at lunchtime down in the park, and the guy tells him, wow, this 3 hours I made $175. Now, you imagine that, Pete?
That's unreal.
My cook who's working his butt off. But the mattresses with Saturday, Pete, that's what I said, you know what? I can't take it no more. I've been quiet. You know that, Pete. I've told you before I didn't want to do an interview. I've been kind of quiet for 2 years. I really have been.
So take me through. Jasper Mirables here on KCMO. So what happened? I know you've had a very tough time getting hold of anybody at City Hall. Your in-district council people, out of district. It's been tough for you. So I know you heard from someone with the Parks and Rec Board. How did that go for you? Who did you hear from?
That was great. I did hear a gentleman who is actually from our produce company, CNC Produce. The head of the Parks and Rec got him and sent him a text and said, please. He said, Jasper, we've met a few times. I'm good friends with the Confortis. That's who used to own CNC Produce. I'm also a newly appointed park commissioner. I'd like to set up a meeting with you and the parks director, Chris Cotton, to develop a plan to prevent this from happening again. In my opinion, you're a tremendous asset, not just because of your amazing restaurant, but also as a dedicated Kansas Citian who pays taxes. 71 years my family's been in Kansas City. I'm more than that, but 71 years at this restaurant. 71 years of paying taxes, personal property taxes down at Watson Mill for 27 years, 45 years at 75th and Warnell. Never missed a property tax, never missed paying our taxes monthly, and you have to put up with something like this. It's not right. It's not right for us. It's not right for anybody in the neighborhood. It's not right for people downtown. It's not right for people south, east, west, or north of us.
That's well said. Jasper Mirables on KCMO Talk Radio. So you got a good note on that. Hopefully it's being taken care of. But what would you say to any other businesses, small businesses in Kansas City who, the owners are listening. They may not have your platform. They may not have your reach, but they're having these same problems. What would you tell them to do right now?
Speak up and don't stop. Put it on Facebook. Ask people to share. Go to a site on Facebook called The Real Kansas City. Post it there. They'll get people to know about it. Let the mayor know. Let your councilman, even though your councilman, your councilwoman does not answer you, just keep calling their office constantly and let them know. I did it for 2 or 3 years. Finally, I got tired of arguing with it because I don't understand the 6th district out here, we're forgotten about. We have council people who have more concerns. I'm sorry. A lot of people may get mad at me for saying this, but who are worried about putting these bike routes in and all that. Hey, you know what? There's more important things. The people out south who are paying their taxes, they don't want to work around people who are going to come up to them and destroy their businesses, and beg constantly when there's availability out there for people who need something. So the people who are out there, they don't want to go to a shelter because they don't want to go around. They can't drink. They can't smoke. They can't do this and that. They don't want to be disciplined. Well, sometimes they have to give up their pride and go do it.
Mm-hmm. That's well said.
And it's a shame, but don't stop. Just constantly let people know, because you know what's going to happen? People are going to be leaving this city, and that's what I'm worried about. Hey, I've had offers before, and Pete, you know that. I told you to go to Leawood, to go over Overland Park, and we can do it easily. We can easily sell the property to one of the car dealerships. I don't want to leave, but I can go to Leawood, do, probably 2 times the business. But I don't want to leave Kansas City. It's where my father, it's where our family started a restaurant. It's where our roots are at. But there comes a point where I'm speaking now, and I'm not going to let down this summer. I'm not going to have another spring and summer where we have to put up with this in Kansas City, and someone needs to do something.
Well, I know that we appreciate that. I know that other business owners appreciate it, and your patrons also appreciate it. So, Jasper, thank you, my friend. Keep up the great work and keep me posted on what's going on.
Oh, I will, Pete. Thank you. Have a great weekend. Love the show.
Thank you. That's Jasper Mirables. Does a great job. You hear him on Saturday mornings as well with his show here on KCMO Talk Radio. So make sure you are tuned in to that each and every Saturday morning. Jasper's Kitchen on 95.7 FM, 11 o'clock. Good stuff there. All right, coming up, the market's down. They are in a free fall this morning. What are people with the administration saying? I think they're making outstanding points, and I'll share it with you next. Meantime, you're thinking about the future of business in Kansas City. You're thinking about the future of your business beyond like whether or not you're going to have a homeless shelter pop up outside of it this weekend. What about artificial intelligence? You might be thinking, well, I'm too small for AI. No, you're not. If you want to integrate AI into your business, but you don't know where to start, there is an event next Wednesday, March 19th, 8 a.m. at the Centric campus here in Kansas City. Free live event that is AI and automation for business. It'll be your roadmap to success with AI. Centric will introduce you to the digital workforce that is designed to work alongside your employees. and you can see real examples of how it's helping other businesses right here in Kansas City. You'll get a framework of AI, how it works, outlining steps you can take to move your company forward with AI. And if you know nothing about this, that's the point. That's fine. They want to help you. All you have to do is sign up right now. Next Wednesday, March 19th, 8 a.m., Centric Campus in Kansas City. It's centric.com/AI ready. That's Centric, CENTRIQ.com/AI ready. Centric has been training the technology workforce right here in Kansas City for more than 30 years. Let them help you. Space is limited. So get in and sign up now. Centric.com/AI ready.
Dave Ramsey here, and you're listening to Pete Mundo on KCMO Talk Radio, now airing on FM at 95.7.
I had a great clip from Scott Bessent, Treasury Secretary, that I cannot play for you because X is currently down. It is not loading. I had a great clip from the Treasury Secretary. He was on CNBC this morning, and I wanted to share that with you because the markets are taking a nosedive this morning. NASDAQ's off 3% this morning, 500 points. The Dow is off 400 points, about 1%. And the S&P is off 100 points, which is just shy of 2%. So that's what's happening now just here in the last few minutes. And listen, the last month has not been a good one for the Dow, going back to February. So we all know that in really any of the markets. They've all been down over the last few weeks. We know that's happening. It's a combination of things going on. The media will tell you it's all about Doge, and it's also about tariffs. It's not that simple. The markets rode Joe Biden's fake economy to record highs. Yes, it was a fake economy propped up by trillions in dollars in government spending that we did not have and now have to pay back on. $36 trillion in debt, $2 trillion annual deficits, unsustainable. Starting during COVID under Trump, if you want to be fair. There's one big mistake of Donald Trump's first term, the biggest one, overspending, especially during COVID. But Biden, of course, put gasoline on the fire and made it exponentially worse than it ever needed to be.
Luckily, we shut down the revenue stream there of people paying back their student loans. So, that was fortunate.
So now we sit here having to clean up the mess. And Scott Bessent was on CNBC this morning, and I'm going to paraphrase it here since I can't play the audio because X is down. And he basically said, listen, the markets were up 20% last year under Biden and 20% the year before that under Biden. And the American people put Donald Trump in the White House because they didn't like the state of the economy. The markets are not Main Street. The markets are not the economy. There is a world where the stock market can do well and Main Street can do well. That's a best case scenario. We had a lot of that from 16 until 2019 pre-COVID. We did not have that the last 2-3 years. It's why you're seeing a realignment of the political parties. The whole idea of the country club Republican. Don't get me wrong, that still exists, but a lot of those people magically became liberals. Why? Well, they fell for the culture wars, hook, line, and sinker. They got a lot of white guilt. They got a lot of shame at their cocktail parties. And a lot of them were living off the markets anyway. And Democrats, with their government spending, largely good for the markets and propped up the markets. So they were kind of cool with it. So when you combine government spending, driving equities, driving the stock market, with a lot of shame and white guilt, that's how you get a new constituency of liberals. The problem is the working class was getting screwed. And you saw this political realignment during the last election, where the Republican Party became much more of a working class, bigger tent party. 90% of our counties moved to the right. It doesn't mean 90% of counties are Republican. They moved or shifted to the right. The Bronx shifted to the right in New York City. LA County shifted to the right. They're still blue counties, but they moved to the right. And that's in large part because of the economy. So Scott Bessent is saying, listen, and this was me paraphrasing him this morning since I can't play you the clip because X is down. We are doing things that we believe need to happen to reset the economy, reset the marketplace, and the stock market might not like it, but guess what? Joe Biden had a great stock market, and how did that work out for the Democrats the last couple of years? Not well. Because Main Street is not the stock market. And this is also something that, Donald Trump was asked about yesterday by Maria Bartiromo during their sit-down on Fox Business Network, and here's what he said.
You said, look, we're going to have a disruption, but we're okay with that. Is that what you meant? The stock market going down was the disruption? What other disruption were you alluding to?
Look, what I have to do is build a strong country. You can't really watch the stock market. If you look at China, they have a 100-year perspective. We have a quarter. We go by quarters.
That's true.
And you can't go by that. You have to do what's right. What we're doing is we're building a tremendous foundation for the future. Tremendous foundation.
Now, here's the crazy part, or the unfortunate part. There is a world where this actually costs the Republican Party politically. because we have short-term memories and we want somebody to fix things right now. That doesn't mean it's the wrong thing to do, but there is a world where that does happen.
You know, I liken this to people who are trying to micromanage their house being built, right? Got to do the foundation. Guys come in, they pour the foundation out. Oh, I can't build on this. This is wet, right? No, you wait for it to set up. You know, it's stages.
Yes.
Right? But people don't understand that, do they? But it'd be the same thing. I can't build on a wet foundation.
Well, think about it too, right? I mean, Joe Biden gave you a foundation that was cracked. It was a broken foundation. Joe Biden built a house, to use John's analogy, where the top floor looks great. But then you start kind of going through the home and you get the inspectors involved and you're like, man, this thing is a house of cards. That's what he built. An unsustainable house of cards driven by unsustainable government spending.
And if you're in Jackson County, that's worth 25% more than last year.
Yep, that's true. Doug in Overland Park, what's up, buddy?
Hey, Pete. Man, I love your show. And you're spot on. You already kind of hit on what my take is. Listen, guys, we can't just change this overnight. The fact is they've come in, they have tamped down the federal government, got things to where they need to be, and this is a result of Biden's awful policies that are actually causing all these problems with the markets. They're going to have to get back to a regular footing, and it's going to take some time. And this economy has sucked for a long time. I've been experiencing change in my business for about 3 or 4 years. It's not even close to what it once was. And so people are going to have to understand that it's not going to change overnight. And we've got to do these things in order to get it back. You know, Biden was just awful. And as far as I'm concerned, you know, let's go, Brandon. We don't need you guys like that again.
I haven't heard that one in a while. Thank you very much there. I didn't have Let's Go Brandon on the bingo card this morning, but here we are on a Monday. It's great to have you here, and thank you for that, Doug. You're right. I mean, this thing is going to get a reset, and frankly, it needs a reset in the worst way. Our caller of the day and more is next on 95.7 FM KCMO Talk Radio.
From the nation's heartland, it's Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM KCMO Talk Radio.
We found it. X is back up. Oh, and I'm sure that, there's going to be a big push today. Elon Musk needs to focus on his businesses and stop worrying about Doge. He can't even keep X online. It was down for 15 minutes. And the same people who say that talk about how much they hate X anyway. And they're going to what is it? Blue Sky or something like that, where they're going?
Blue Sky, yeah, that's one.
That's woke Twitter now.
Threads, I don't.
Yeah, Threads. But now Threads is owned by Instagram, which is owned by Facebook, which is run by Zuckerberg. And Zuckerberg's been red-pilled. So I don't know if they're going to Threads, but wherever they're going, they're going to be pushing that today. Elon needs to focus on X. He can't even keep it online. So here is Scott Besson. This is the clip I was talking about right before the break this morning, CNBC, saying, I get it. We want the markets to go up, but we've got a job to do here. And if voters just cared about the stock market, well, Republicans would not be in power.
If we ever went down 20% on the NASDAQ or 15% on the S&P, with people that want Trump to fail, that's going to be splayed across every newspaper in the world. I'm just wondering whether the tolerance for something like that for the administration.
Well, look, as you said, Joe, the market was up 20% last year, 20%
so there is
the year
some house money.
No. I'm going to put it another way.
Okay.
Did the Biden administration succeed? The American people weren't buying it just because the market was up. They voted out. They voted out the Democrats.
Question related to the regulatory or deregulatory agenda, which I think.
So that right there is Scott Besson, Treasury Secretary. And here's the other thing to just note on this front. I mean, yes, I would like the stock market to go up, but you know what I would like more than that? Because I'm, God willing, 30 years away from going anywhere. Going to be working for a while. My broader goal would be to be able to have more money to put into the stock market. That's what I think we should all be thinking about right now. How do we create an economy that will give us all more money to put back into the stock market, to invest in our 401ks, in our IRAs, Roths, whatever it might be? Because that's the bigger problem right now. And remember this, too, about the market. So much of it has been driven by what they call the Magnificent Seven. Those are the big seven tech stocks that, frankly, have driven the bulk of the stock market the last few years. NVIDIA, Tesla, Alphabet, which is Google, Amazon, Meta, Facebook, Apple, and Microsoft. We have this stock market that is propped up largely by those seven companies. And the Magnificent Seven going up doesn't really translate to a working economy for the working class. Market independence, what's up, buddy?
Hey, listen, you're exactly right. I'm 68, seen a lot of things I want to tell you. You know, a house built on sand cannot stand. And when Ross Perot reigned in 92, he talked about fair trade, the debt, clean out the barn. And so what have we been doing all these years? We've been electing cooks to make us feel good instead of electing a doctor, to take care of us in the long run. And finally, as far as the stock market's concerned, I just tell people, especially young people, you just keep investing in your mutual funds, stay diversified, keep the dollar cost averaging every month, keep putting it away, because doing the right things takes time, but time is on your side. We have kicked the can down the road too long. We have to fix it.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of where I'm at, Mark. Just, close your eyes. Don't look at it for a while. And God willing, if you're on our side of things, on the younger side, you got a lot of runway. But Mark Falter said on Friday on this show, he's our Retirement Income Hour host on Saturday and Sunday mornings. He alluded to the fact that, listen, if you are approaching retirement and you are not reallocating right now, or if you've got to start living on this money sooner rather than later, you got to be doing it. You can't be riding these stocks that got very frothy over the last few years and just think it's going to go on forever. You got to take money off the table and reallocate. So that's what it's time to do. And hopefully, if that is your situation in life, that's what you have been working on. So it's that time of the morning. I want to set up our caller of the day on the topic, which we were discussing, that led to our caller of the day. And that is that there is a total reversal going on the left with one key issue, and that is men and women's sports. Gavin Newsom opened the door to this last week when he talked with Charlie Kirk on his podcast about how it's inherently unfair for men to compete against women. He said that, and that was the first time you've heard a prominent person in that political party admit that. Now, he kind of did the little song and dance, walk the line, the whole thing, but at least he said it's unfair to young women to have to compete against men. That opened up the door. And then over the weekend, you had multiple Sunday shows asking Democratic politicians about what Gavin Newsom said. And this is the summary of what you got out of it. Adam Schiff on ABC.
Look, I played in sports. Our kids played in sports. I want all young people to have the experience of playing in sports, every young person. And I want those sports to be fair. I want those sports to be safe. And I have confidence that local schools and local communities can make those decisions without the federal government making them for them.
But is he right
again,
on that? Is he right on that?
I think to the degree, to the degree, though, I think as a political matter, that we remove the focus from where most Americans are concerned, and that is they're concerned about their ability to provide for their family. I think to the degree that we get away from that, that's a mistake.
So now they're going to be the economic experts, and they'll leave boys and women's sports to local municipalities and states. And, suddenly those who love centralized control by the government are fans of local control? Make that make sense. Here's our caller of the day.
Hello? It's the Mundo in the Morning Caller of the Day. On KCMO Talk Radio, now on FM at 95.7.
913-408-7957 on KCMO. Jay's in Gladstone. Go ahead, Jay.
Hey, Pete, good morning. I'm a little confused. Are these the same Democrats that were so upset about Roe versus Wade being sent back to the local people to figure things out? Now wanting things figured out by the locals?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point. That is part of the hypocrisy here, Jay. Thank you. Well done, Jay and Gladstone. Short, sweet, dropping that mic, baby. Let's go. Let's go. Well done there, Jay. I love it, buddy. And he's right. They love the idea of centralized bureaucratic control until suddenly they're trying to figure out how to wiggle their way out of this issue. And let's be very clear, that's what this is. They realize it's an 80-20 issue. They're on the wrong side of it. How do they get out of it? What do? And it should be a simple yes, no. Do you want to allow biological men and women's sports? Yes or no? Well, let me hem and haw for a little bit. I played sports. Yeah, Adam Schiff played sports. He was the water boy, I'm sure, back in his heyday. I can't see him doing anything else. Could you imagine? Look at Adam Schiff. Does that guy look like an athlete at all? In any way, shape, or form? Please, come on now.
I'm going to say no.
Yeah, thank you, John. That's true. That's how I feel.
Talk about a bombshell.
Chess club. He was a cheerleader on the chess club. He wasn't smart. He's not a smart guy. You got to be smart to be in the chess club. Schiff's guy doesn't stand for anything. He's just a classic California politician who does what he's told.
I didn't say he was good at chess club. He might have joined.
Maybe he was JV chess club. How about that? All right. I'll give Adam Schiff that much. JV chess club guy. 913-408-7957. We'll put a bow on the week with, this show making its way on the local TV. How and why next.
Stream Mundo in the morning on the KCMO Talk Radio app.
Kevin Keatsman uncanceled 15 minutes away on KCMO. So listen, I will always give local media a hard time when it's deserved, and that is frankly more often than not. But I'll give them some props when they also earn those. And listen, there are a couple of really good reporters in Kansas City. Matt Fleener at KMBC is one of them. He's appeared on this show on multiple occasions when he's covering a big story. John Ketz at Fox 4 does an excellent job as a reporter as well. But there are many reporters who just don't know how to do the job. Not even that they're not good at it. They just don't know how to do it. They showed up, I don't even know where from, but like they're not cutting their teeth somewhere that they need to cut their teeth. So then they show up in Kansas City and they are way in over their heads. I mean, from a delivery perspective, from a news gathering perspective, it's not good. But there's a couple of good ones here in Kansas City, and Fleener's one of them. And he reached out to me on Friday afternoon after he saw my tweet response to his tweet. Now, to be clear, his tweet was just a news story. He's an actual old school news guy. He's not old, but he's an old school news guy. And his post was a picture of Sharice Davids, congresswoman here on the Kansas side, meeting with former federal workers, talking about losing their jobs. And I just shared the post on X, and I wrote, the Kansas City media industry has lost many good people this week. Do they get a meeting with Sharice Davids? Has she done consistent meetings with other industries hit by layoffs in recent years? How about businesses who had to close during COVID? Or is this all just political posturing? So Matt hits me up and he said, hey, I'm trying to get both sides on the story. I can't get a hold of anybody with the Kansas delegation right now on the Republican side. Can we swing by the studios and do something? I said, sure, no problem. So he came up to the studios Friday, probably 2 o'clock or so. And here was the package on Channel 9.
Also happening now in Kansas, Representative Sharice Davids is working to help laid off federal workers.
Well, she held a roundtable today. KMBC 9's Matt Fleener showing us the impact and the reaction to those losing their jobs.
There's been a lot of talk about cutting the federal workforce. We've seen some of that impact here at the IRS in Kansas City.
That's why a former IRS worker and other workers who are no longer with the federal government or in limbo met with Congresswoman Sharice Davids on Friday. A couple took the buyout offer. A couple more were let go in their probationary period. We spoke with one worker let go and a conservative radio host about those job cuts.
Yes, this happens in the private sector. Completely agree. But there's always been an unspoken understanding that you don't make as much money in the federal government as you do in the private sector, but the trade-off is stability. And now you have lost that stability.
We all want stability, but then the marketplace has to play a role in all this. And right now the marketplace is very clear. We can't afford any of it. You can't tax your way out of it. Just there are cuts that have to be made.
Every one of those workers on Friday said their job search continues. They try to figure out what's next. Now they no longer work for the federal government. In Kansas City, Matt Fleener, KMBC 9 News.
That was Matt Fleener, as you just heard. Appreciate him stopping by the studio on Friday, running that package over the weekend. And obviously, if you've been listening to this show, you know how I feel about it. But that, even what that federal worker said there in that package is just not true. And I've got the data to back it up. This is according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Government workers earn 23.2% more in wages and salaries than private sector workers. How about that? This notion of, oh, well, I'm just doing my duty as an American citizen. I'm just, cobbling things together here because I'm a good old-fashioned rah-rah American trying to help the country's cause, and I'm working for less because I want stability. And we expect stability in the public sector because we are working for nothing compared to you guys in the private sector. You're not. That's just factually not true. The Congressional Budget Office found that federal workers with a high school diploma or less received 40% more in total compensation than their private sector counterparts. How do you interpret that data point? If you don't have a college education, you can get a much better gig with the government than you could anywhere in the private sector, unless you go to like a trade school or something like that. But if all you have is your high school degree, you should find a government job because there is a high likelihood that you will get much more in compensation than you ever would in the private sector. So none of that's true. Now, of course, I can't counterpoint this guy because I don't know what he said to Matt. And then, of course, Matt asks me questions and what they run. I mean, we sat here for about 5-6 minutes and, I got a 20-second soundbite. That's how it works in television. There's nothing wrong with that. I joked with Matt on the way out. I said, so we just sat for 5 minutes, Matt. How much of that gets on the air? Because he said to me, he's like, that whole thing's not going to make it. I'm like, yeah, I know, man. I get how it works with TV. And then I said under my breath, that's why radio's better. But no, I get it. They've got to keep those things tight. But it's like this narrative that these government employees, and I know that most government employees are just hardworking people like you and I, but the notion that you are going to get an immense amount of sympathy from the private sector, no matter how hard media tries, and I don't mean Matt, I just mean media across the board tries. At least he got the counterpoint out there, which I much appreciate. Trust me. Most people in town ain't doing that. It's just not true. And the facts back it up. The data backs it up. And I got some angry emails about this over the weekend from some Channel 9 viewers. Doug wrote to me, Mr. Mundo, M-U-N-D-O-W. He threw a little W on the back of the name. I don't know what he was going for there, but he went on to say that DOJ should focus on the larger programs rather than the smaller ones that are being eliminated because they are red meat for the red hats base. That was his line. Red meat for the red hats base.
You see what I did there?
So I wonder how long he's been sitting on that one. Doug was very proud of himself. Hey, give yourself a round of applause there, Doug.
There you go.
Very proud of himself. And clearly a guy who's never run a local or small business because guess what? Small cuts stack up to big cuts. And then Rebecca wrote to me over the weekend, another gem of an email here. Do you have any idea what all the federal workers do to keep you safe? Okay, Karen. All right.
How dare you?
Sorry, Rebecca. Sorry. But that's the kind of stuff that's out there. And I think they're most upset that people aren't falling for it hook, line, and sinker. Kevin Keatsman has you for an hour, uncanceled, 10 to 11 every weekday on KCMO Talk Radio. And then the last week of Dan Bongino. So don't miss that, 11 to 2 on KCMO.